Hello, I'm Michael.
I'm Radek,
And this is the podcast.
a sounding board for interesting ideas and insights. We discuss books we read and want to share with you,
As well as technology and productivity, which is what we do by day, working on our app, Nozbe.
or whatever else comes to mind.
And today we are continuing our discussion, pre-discussion about goal setting and plans, because we want to really prime you for the best advice ever to set goals and get your best year ever.
Yeah, this is what we do every year. For me, it's been for at least last couple of years, which is to do an annual review, a proper annual review, not the New Year's resolution, but to really think about last year and what you want to achieve and setting goals, setting a plan for next year and doing it right. So we've discussed this on the last 2 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was an episode on sort of a new template for how to set goals, how to make a plan, how to structure it in a way that doesn't overwhelm you. And last week we've discussed values and how to really select which goals make sense for us and which are not really that important. And today we're going to talk about what exactly?
How to stop doing stuff.
And why it's okay.
Yeah.
So last year, when we've discussed annual review, you've mentioned this idea of closing last year, which is to say to sort of come to grips with how last year went and sort of start anew. And so if you've made a plan to do something and you didn't achieve that goal, you don't have to move that goal for next year, right? It's okay to just give it up and decide that your plans have changed. Like stuff that's not yet done doesn't automatically move to next year. It's a new decision to make, right?
Yes. The thing is that we very often forget that we have a choice. Mm-hmm. And we, in the previous episodes, when we were talking about our values, one of the biggest values for me, as I mentioned, was a choice, that I can choose things I want to do. And even though this is one of my biggest values, only last year when one of my friends, Michał Szafrański, mentioned that on his podcast, I realized that I was still trapped in this mindset of automatically moving things to next year, because of course they haven't been completed then, they have to be completed at some point later. Mm-hmm. But if you follow GTD, getting things done concept, there is this concept of someday maybe. So maybe instead of automatically moving as your next goal for next year, this last year's goal, should be moved to a different place, to a someday maybe place. Or called quarantine, for later ideas and later things to execute. Because this only, first of all, it empowers you that you have a choice. So mm-hmm. This way, and then the other thing is that there are trade-offs. If you are not doing this anymore, they might have been a reason why you haven't completed it. And one of the reasons could be that, it's no longer that relevant as you thought it would be. And this way, if you take it to someday maybe, you create space for new things, for new stuff, for more relevant stuff. And that's why it sounds obvious, but it's not. And for me, it was kind of eye-opener that I had this choice of closing or basically shutting something down, even halfway done.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And something similar I've noticed this year is that sometimes it's not just about like very specific goals, like projects, but also things you do on a continuous basis, like. Sometimes there is something that you used to do more and now you do less of it. And I've realized that sometimes it's okay. Because last year when you've mentioned closing the year, I'm not sure I fully understood that at the time because it was not relevant to my situation at the time. But this year when I was reviewing things, I realized that there's a bunch of areas, not projects, but sort of areas and habits where I no longer do them as much as I used to. So for example, I used to blog quite a lot. In 2015, I've written, I think like 10 blog posts or something. Last year, I've written one. And I mean, 2016, I've written one. And 2017, I've written none. Similarly with public speaking, I've done a lot of that in 2016. And in 2017, I've done 0. And I didn't read as many books in 2017 as in previous year. I've done 20 books, not 34, and I didn't take as many notes, or rather, I was taking a lot of notes while reading the book, but never sort of synthesized them, only like have like scribbles. Yes. And also, I'm not as physically active right now, not in 2017 as at some point in 2016, and my weight, while still very good, is not at the all-time low, right? It's good, but it's not as good as before.
Yeah. So just a short, if it doesn't disrupt your train of thought, this with the weight thing, this happens, and this happens not only because of these situations, but also because of food and other things. And with that, well, in this episode, we are supposed to be saying what we should be stopping doing. Well, one of the things I stopped doing was eating shit. So eating not good stuff, because I did my diet 4 years ago. Over the last 4 years, I've been kind of, getting back a little bit more kilos. And now I had to again cut the thing and start my slow carb diet process again, because my weight is coming to very dangerous levels. So with that, I kind of reinstated my things, and I think this is where you're getting at it. That why some of the habits or old habits you have to reinstate again, right?
Yes, but also no. So, like with that, it is something that I definitely keep my eye on. Like I keep tracking it. It's on my list. But my realization is actually something different. It's that I've realized it's toxic to hold yourself to the highest standard you've ever achieved.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because the thing is that, like with weight and exercise, and with reading, I'm still doing very well. Okay, my weight is still better than it was, 90% of my life. The basic sort of habits, like the way I eat has been transformed forever. Like there are some most basic choices that I've replaced with other things, such that it's just not going to rise to the same level it's been before. So that's good. With exercise, I'm still far more physically active again than for 90% of my life. I can still run 10 kilometers. I'm fine, right? I also still read a lot, and even though I haven't I wasn't as regular last year with the habit of publishing my book notes, I was still taking book notes, and we are still discussing some books, right?
Oh, yes.
So like the thing I realized is that those 3 areas where I've been before, I've only been better at them when they were my singular focus.
Right.
Right? Like in 2016, like between 2015 and 2016, I've read the book Why We Get Fat, link in the show notes to the book and to our discussion. And I've realized some things, and I've changed things. And over sometime after that, I've changed my eating habits, and I've lost a lot of weight. Similarly, I started doing gym, and I was doing that very intensively, but it sort of fizzled away. Like I was never as like this intensive afterwards, but it's okay. Like it's hard to expect from myself to be as good with those things as I've been at my peak, but with all of them at the same time, because that was never true. Like I was never as good with weight and exercise and reading and book note taking and blogging and public speaking and also other new things I've done in 2017, right? But it's just something I haven't quite noticed, because it's always been like, when planning, it always sort of feels like a progression. Like, you don't stop doing things. You, especially with habits, like, you get good at something and then you layer on top of that. So you don't fall back, and like, not hitting that peak lifetime achievement all the time made me feel sort of bad before I realized how ridiculous it is, because like, I fall back.
Yeah, but yeah, okay, I totally get it now. So there are trade-offs always in life. As you said, the peak performance shouldn't be our standard. You're totally right. Yeah. I was reviewing link in the show notes. I have my yearly reviews, and now I'm writing the 2017 yearly review. And what I meant when I also realized is, for example, every year I post how many kilometers I ran, how many kilometers I biked, and how many kilometers I swam. And for example, over the last 2 years, I have been running less than at my peak in 2014. And I should be feeling bad about myself, right? But no, I'm still running a lot. So my habit is there. So it's there. It's just at a lower level, because naturally, because it's a habit now, it's not a thing. It's not my point of focus. It had to, go to lower standards. But of course, surprise, surprise. The trade-off is this, that in the same time, my swimming improved, because now swimming is one of my main focuses. So this way, I focus on the swimming. I'm right now logging lots of swimming hours, and I haven't been doing that then, right? And I expect that after this year, if I reach like my swimming, goal, next year, swimming won't be my focus anymore. It will just be a thing I do, and I will be logging less swimming hours. Because of that, the problem would be if I would completely stop doing swimming, because then it would mean that I just completely lost it. And as you can see from my running logs and biking logs, I haven't lost it. I'm still there. I'm still in shape. I'm just not at my peak level, which is, as you said, fine, because I have to focus on other things. And I cannot be, on one hand, on a peak performance there, while still being focused on something else.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's just a trap in thinking that I got myself into before the annual review, when I started like thinking about it more deeply. And I think the most important thing with sort of habits and just things like that is that you track them. Because if you have the data, you can constantly keep an eye on it. So with weight and exercise, I log those. So I won't get into the other trap, which is to feel that I'm fine and then stop doing it at all for so long that I really regress to a bad level. But that is not the problem. The problem is opposite. Like, because I'm less than I was at the peak, I see sort of like, especially when you put it on a graph, it sort of gets worse, right? And so you naturally extrapolate in your mind that at this pace, in a year it will be there. But that's not necessarily true. Like, it's just you're, not as good as at the peak, but that's okay, because then it was the singular focus. Then it was something you really focused on. When I was like establishing a completely new diet or a new habit, and as long as I keep a check on this, that is fine. Like, that is it. Like, it's not so important that I need to be at what I was the peak all the time.
Yeah, coming back to your books, I mean, you only read 20 books, but if you compare it to your low levels, like when you weren't listening consciously to audiobooks, you were reading like maybe two books a year, and now you're at your low level you're getting 20 books, which without thinking too much about it.
Yeah, so it was, I think, 3 or 4 paper books a year before audiobooks. So yeah, like five times difference.
Exactly. So it's not that bad. And coming back, to my diet now, I can put it better in perspective. So I lost my weight in 2014, and then it was my focus to lose weight, slow carb diet, the whole 9 yards. We'll link in the show notes. And I lost it, and I haven't missed it then since. So what I did, and in the last 4 years, I was just more or less controlling the thing. And I was controlling it very well. And as we can, attest to our weight-ins during the run of the show, I was doing fine. But of course, at some point, I had to correct the course because I realized I just went a little bit too much up. And then right now I'm stressing the habit. I'm putting the focus back again on this, like for the beginning of the year. And I know, and I already see with the results, as my second week already in, and I already see the results, that when I have that and I know how to do it and I'm not suffering anything, in 2 months I will be done. I will be at my good level again. And I will keep it for next 4 or 5 years again. If not more. It depends how I'm gonna track it later or control it later. But again, it's my singular focus now, but it won't be in a few months.
Yeah, that's the really amazing thing with the low carb diet is that at least for me, there was this sort of light bulb lighting up above my head that now I see like which knobs I can consciously turn with some effort, but not like punishing myself, just like, oh, let's just focus and make sure I do this and this and this, and it just works, right?
Exactly.
And I think the problem with putting too high of a standard on yourself with too many things at once, the things that are supposed to be continuous habits and not the thing you focus on. So I'm also coming back to the thing we've discussed two weeks ago, is that if you have a very high standard, you start feeling a lot of guilt when you don't achieve it. And the problem with that is that it doesn't work. Like the feelings of self-guilt and shame never work, are never productive. They never stimulate change. They just make you feel worse. Like
in no case, guilting your own self or guilting somebody else, it never helps. It's not constructive.
Yeah, it's not. And when you sort of ease up on yourself, and sure, hold yourself to a fairly high standard, but not the highest standard ever, and just think about it consciously and not emotionally. And when you track the data, when you do the weekly review, and when you approach it in the podcast way, which is to observe, notice things, come up with hypotheses why something changed, and come up with possible solutions, sort of systemic solutions to such problems, and not just punishing yourself to just try harder, which also never works. That is far more helpful, because you're not like using up you're not draining your scarce resources of self-control to always be at your best and then feel really guilty about it. It's much better to just come up with habits, with those systems that push you in the right way, but without it feeling like something you must work hard on.
So I can give you an example recently that I realized is that when you wear an Apple Watch, there is this concept of activity rings and streaks. So you have a streak, you don't want to break a streak, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice, but the streak has the same problem that you mentioned before in the episode of having this counter on the activity or new comments or things like that. The streak puts pressure on you. Right. So, for example, remember last year I was really on a big streak, activity streak. So it's good, but then like every day you want to be at the highest level. So you have to focus on this streak. And now what I realized is that I have this new habit app which I'm using, and because I want to, as I mentioned before, I want to keep my priority Nozbe tasks in Nozbe and habits, move them somewhere else. And I use this habit list app. And what I like about it is that it shows me the streaks, but in a different, what I like about how it's done is that every day I'm controlling my habits. But for example, I just noticed that I haven't studied French in 5 days, right? So it shows me -5. So, I don't know, some kind of display. The way it's displayed, it's not enticing me to always have the streak, but it serves more as a warning. Okay, I'm looking at this list. I haven't studied for the 5 days already. So this way I don't lose focus on my habit, what you mentioned, that I don't completely neglect it. Now I know, okay, my streak of French, is not studying it for the 5 days. So today I have to make time because it's been already 5 days. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose what I've already learned. And the same goes for other habits. So I'm trying to keep the streak, but if I miss it, it's fine. But if I see like it's -5, I'm like, okay, -5, it means I have to just, get back to it. I can't forget about it. So it's kind of like keeping myself in check, but not obsessing about having the streak. And I like this balance. I like it. And and this habit list, my daily habit list is my constant reminder of things I have to be, monitoring. I have to be taking care of. And it's great. Right now, I'm like things like you would be proud of me. I'm flossing very often now. So it's really great. This is a completely new habit for me. I haven't been flossing almost never in my life. So I'm pretty late to the party. So already my teeth should be, falling out. But I'm doing it now, and it's really nice. It's really helpful, and I feel better. and there are other habits that I'm tracking right now. And again, I'm not flossing maybe every day, but if I just see that I haven't been flossing for a day or two, it motivates me to floss today. To get back. So and to try to engrave this habit. Right. So I really like it. And this is like the way of keeping myself in check.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I treat my habit tracking app, I use Productive, differently. I only put there things that I really want to do every single day, like things that I consider sort of essential. And I have the badge on the app so that when I don't have something checked off for the current part of the day, because you can schedule something for morning, afternoon, evening, or any part of day, it will send me a notification. It will remind me of it. So it's a bit different, but it makes a lot of sense. One more observation regarding exercise is that like sometimes when you get into a habit of something, but like you don't hold yourself to the highest standard you've ever achieved, this freedom from your high expectations brings a new joy to things. Like you can experience them better because you're not pushing yourself too hard. So for example, like for me, I don't run regularly anymore. Regular in the sense that it's not a scheduled thing. Like it's not something I do like twice a week or something. But sometimes I just see, the sun is up. It's a really nice day, and I'm like, damn, I really feel like going for a run. And I do, right? And because I don't push myself too hard. I'm not trying to schedule it in the same way I've done before, and you do. It's just not as important to me anymore, but I still track it. It's sort of when I do it, there's a purely intrinsic motivation based on the fact that I really enjoy it, and not it's me, feeling like it's something I do for myself and it's important and I sort of enjoy it in that way, but I'm also like feeling like, oh man, it's so hard. I don't really feel like it, right?
All right. So moving from that and talking about diet, I was thinking about, especially this year, more of an information diet for me. We talked about it before because you mentioned how you are getting rid of things, letting go of things. And one of the reasons for me to, one of the motivations for me was to look at my iPhone, look at things I'm reading on my iPhone, look at the things I'm reading on my daily websites I visit. And I realized that very often what I'm doing, or what I caught myself doing, was reading lots of news twice or three times, just from different sources. And I realized it was it's a waste of time, basically. So, for example, I'm subscribing via RSS to some Mac central blogs, right? Then I have my Twitter. Then I have the ATP podcast. Then I have several sources of the same information. And when I really thought about it, most of it just overlaps all the time. So, okay, I know more about something which is totally not related to my job. It's just something I'm interested in. But do I really have to know like the thing from all the angles? Not really. And if I really need to, I can dive deeper and I can study it. No problem. If I really, feel like it. But I shouldn't be feeling like it all the time, right? So I started seeing how I have to, and I'm doing it right now. I'm still using RSS for some ways of subscribing to content the easiest way. But I've been removing, and I'm removing still lots of subscriptions so that I don't read these blogs, or I'm not tempted to read these blogs. I realized that if I have once a week and listen to an ATP podcast, I get all the news because they basically relate all the important news that are important to me. Then I have my Twitter account. So if I browse through Twitter once a day, I get my news like more than I should ever care for, and that's all I need, right? And I don't need more. I don't need more channels, more things, and recently I've been treating also my Pocket account, so read it later account, this way, that I'm adding things to Pocket to read later, but I never do. But this kind of frees me up from this obligation to read it now, like from this urge to read something now. I just move it there, and I know I'm going to read it at some point, and probably I will not. But it's there in case I want to. So this way, I'm trying to really get rid of all these sources, because I thought I was very deliberate about it. I thought I had it pretty much set up well. But upon reviewing it now in the beginning of the year, I realized, no, I've been just digesting too much information, too many details which I don't care about, which I shouldn't care about. And if I want to, I can always do it. If I want to,
yeah. We'll put the links in the show notes for the series of episodes related to that. You should try giving up Twitter for a few weeks and see how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think I should. I
mean, it's you might react to it differently than I did, but it was really like the most interesting thing to me was that it was supposed to be a short experiment. It's just that when I was there all the time, it felt much more important than it really was. And sort of stopping to do it for a few weeks and then coming back, it makes you reevaluate it. Because a lot of things that seemed important when you check it, probably a couple times a day and you're sort of in on the joke, turn out to actually be sort of empty information calories.
Yeah. So based on that, so I will see if I can do it, but I will try.
Addict.
No, one of the things that I would miss is that I really follow my favorite basketball team on Twitter, but I might actually just do a link to just their account on Twitter and just follow them there and just see because every day or two they are playing basketball. So. This is my way of watching the game. I'm just watching the Twitter feed of the game, so I know what's happened, and that's it. So I might just follow them, or just watch their Twitter account for this, and that's it.
Yeah,
I really like basketball.
I mean, you can save it as a bookmark in Safari and check it once every 2 days or whatever you feel like.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. Okay, so that might be a good experiment, and. Based on all that, what we just said, there is this concept of just-in-time learning. And it's a concept from the book, which is perfectly named for today's episode. It's called Let Go, How to Transform Moments of Panic into a Life of Profits and Purpose by Pat Flynn. So Pat Flynn of the Smart Passive Income podcast. I've been following Pat Flynn for quite a while, but I was referred to this book by my friend, Michał Szafrański. And this book is really cool. It's a nice story of Pat's way into online business, but the concept of just-in-time learning was something that I was already thinking about before, but it's just so nice that somebody, like, you're reading a book and then somebody just tells you in your face the concept you've been pondering about. So what it comes down to is not only limiting the sources of information for me, but kind of redirecting the source of information according to what I'm doing right now. So, for example, right now, I'm according to my plan, I have 2 or 3 important marketing projects in our company to do, and they are related to some skills which I have kind of, but I want to learn more. So now, instead of subscribing to blogs about whatever, Apple, iPhone, whatever, once I've removed those, I can subscribe to blogs regarding these techniques of marketing for this time. And this way, I'm being primed by these blogs with the information I'm studying right now and testing right now anyway. You know what I'm saying? So this way, I'm just changing the information, the source of information, according to my goals for now. And then after I've done these goals, or I've progressed and I don't need that much information from these sources, but I want to shift focus to different goals, again, I will have to curate my sources of information again to just follow or listen or whatever to these kind of sources. This way, I'm priming myself to these things. So I'm learning subconsciously. My mind is working on these things while I'm just, working on it anyway.
That is really interesting. I noticed I was sort of doing a similar thing just now. Like, I'm right now reading Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin. It's a book about habits and habit formation. And, habits is just something I think about a lot, and it's something I've been revisiting over the annual review, and so it naturally struck me as something interesting and relevant right now, right? When I'm sort of deciding on how to go about things. And similarly, not long ago, I read Driven to Distraction at Work because I was also interested in sort of understanding better the nature of sort of compulsive behavior and maybe get some new insights and new ideas, new strategies. And, it makes a lot of sense that you're augmenting what you're going to do anyway with new knowledge. It's actually something you've mentioned on last year's episode of the podcast, that when making goals, you need to ask yourself which skills you need to acquire for that.
Yeah, exactly. But this information, diet or information refocus adds to it. So this is why what we always mention on this show, that priming yourself to situations brings results, because by priming your mind is working on things. It's the same, it's the same with decision making. You make different decisions if you're primed differently. And this way, and I haven't thought about it. I've been always consuming the same kind of additional information, not only books, but what I'm saying, of books, yes, as you said, when you want to study a subject, you choose books according to the subject. But I'm not saying only books. I'm saying everything else. Even if I wouldn't give up Twitter, I would, for example, completely change my following, only to follow people about, this kind of marketing thing, right? And then I would follow people based on habit tracking. Then I would follow different people. You know what I'm saying? Completely shifting kind of your whole environment to prime yourself to this information.
That's really interesting.
So I want to try it. I will try with blogs and information based on the goals that I have for the first quarter of this year, and I'll tell you how it goes, after the quarter. But I'm looking forward to trying to limit the overall information that I get about the world and focus on this kind of more streamlined, more focused kind of information that I would be getting apart from deliberate practice, because I want to, of course, do also deliberate practice in these things, in these skills. But apart from that, in the other times, keep being primed with this kind of information or relevant information or similar information.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm just I'm processing it still because it makes so much sense. And definitely, I think simplifying everything, like again, the whole series of episodes on that, and getting rid of unnecessary stuff and limiting, going on an information diet is helpful here, because there's a limit to how much we can absorb at one time, and if we don't feel overwhelmed with irrelevant things, and like there's a bunch of stuff we follow, but it's related to the sort of project at hand for a time, for a couple of months, for example, then it's much easier to focus on that and like absorb a lot of information, but not feel overwhelmed with that because it's all in one theme.
Exactly. That's what I'm like. For example, remember when you started learning Swift, and now that you have 20 years of experience, but when you started Swift, it was the same. You started following more people about Swift, more like more blogs about Swift. Like you also kind of changed the shifted a little bit the way what you were consuming, because you wanted to learn more about Swift. So not only learning just what Apple just sent you on developer website, but changed the whole community kind of changed, where you started participating because it was Swift. Remember?
Yeah, that's right. And that's actually really interesting that you mentioned it, because that's very related to the two things I've not been doing much lately, which is, again, blogging and public speaking, because both were very much related to the quest to get really good at Swift, because that was really interesting to me at the time. That's what I wanted to learn. That was very relevant to my work at the time. And then it just became a thing I do. And for various reasons that will become apparent in a couple of months, it's been less relevant lately. Like it's still part of my everyday job, but I've been focusing on some other things with programming, and so I've not had as much interest in following Swift-related things, in writing, and in public speaking about it, because it's not as relevant to me. It's not as interesting to me. I feel like I've I don't know, mastered might be a bit of a strong word, but I get it. I know it now. And also I don't have as much to say about it anymore, because the most interesting things I wanted to say have been said, and now I'm focusing on other things, right? And so that's another part of this stopping to do things, with letting go, is that I felt for a while a little bit about this, that, it was really cool to be doing things in the public like this, blogging and doing public speaking. But I realized I'm actually okay with that. Like there were reasons why that was really important to me at the time, and now it isn't. And then in the future, it's very likely that will become important to me and interesting again. And that's fine. Like it's neither that important or relevant to me at the time, and also it's not of strategic importance. Like I'm not trying to be a blogger full time, right? I'm not trying to like write a book or something, and so I need to be on Twitter and blog and do stuff like that so that people know my name. Like I don't care about that. And so I decided that it's okay that I'm not blogging and public speaking for a long period of time. And then I already see on the horizon for 2018, but for the later part of 2018, a bunch of new ideas and topics which are related to the work I'm doing right now. And once I can talk about that, then I'll probably have a big burst project. Again, 2 weeks ago episode. And I'll write a lot about it, and maybe I'll do some talks on some conferences. And then maybe I'll be done with that for a while, and that's okay. But it's just something I've had to realize, that I don't have to layer, like I don't have to continue doing things just because I've done them before. It's okay to let go, because I'm also doing other things now, and I don't want to be sort of artificially consistent with things just because, like only with things that are truly important, because there needs to be space for experimentation, for new things, right?
Yeah, and it's also as always, brings me back to our discussion on essentialism. What's really essential now, and what's really essential for you. And one of the things I'm letting go of this year is I'm letting go of my personal website. I mean, it will still be there, the Slowinski.com. It will still be there, but I won't be blogging as much as I used to.
Yeah.
Although my blog kind of picked up on traffic last year, but it doesn't matter because I know that I have to shift my focus to Nozbe and to Nozbe related projects and to Nozbe marketing, and for that I have to just give up the other part. So it's hard to let go of something that is quite working, But if I don't do that, I'm not going to progress in the other thing. So I have to really just mindfully close it or just put it, to a back burner, or someday maybe, as I mentioned, or like maintenance mode, as we call it sometimes. This way, I have more space and more focus to what I really want to do in my life, or what I don't really want to do in my life now, in this year. That's why letting go is so important, and being able to, and the best part is that if you're not conscious about it, there are two things that might happen. If you're not consciously letting go of things, you will let go of them anyway, because stuff will happen. That's one thing. And then the second thing, which is more problematic, is that you will try to maintain the other things. As you said, you will be guilty. You will be feeling guilty about it. And you will do a miserable job with something you've been guilty about and with the new thing. So it will be a miserable year anyway. That's why these kind of decisions are hard, but they are important, because only then you can see the trade-offs, and you can explore more. You have more power to do the things that you really want to do.
All right. So I guess it's time to talk about the actual goal setting process next week, the review of 2017 and our plans for 2018. Now that we've discussed how to structure your goals, how to select your goals based on values, and how to let go of things just because you've done it before.
Okay. I think we are ready for the discussion.
All right. So see you next week.
Okay, but before we jump to next week's episode, we should be, getting some picks here.
All right. So for this week, I wanted to recommend the book Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. This is the book of the history of cancer. It's just super fascinating. And I read the other book, The Gene by Siddhartha Mukherjee. And it's just, they are quite long and super fascinating. Just very interesting in general. You learn something about the world. But it's just interesting when reading things like this, for me, is that you see sort of very remote parallels to like completely different things. So it's a book about, biology and medicine and cancer. But I've noticed in that sort of insights which are completely unrelated. Definitely recommending that.
Okay, so my pick for today, apart from the Let Go book by Pat Flynn, which I completely recommend, is another book called The Code of Trust by Robin Dreeke, Joe Navarro, and some other people here. So it's a long book about trust, and like halfway through the book I was getting bored, but there are a few chapters really interesting about how to be more trustworthy with your team, how to evoke trust, how to make sure that you don't lose trust of people. And I liked it. I mean, it's all about things that it's based on the stuff from the military and not only military, but it's really important for team leaders and for the teams. And I really liked it. And there are things that I'm doing right, which is good, but there are things where I could be improving, and I like to be reminded of that. So it was a kind of an interesting read.